Bitso posted this report on that it's called a Crypto Panorama in Latin America, a 2024 report. Kush, now I wanna land in what's bullish, what's neutral, and what's bearish for Bitso.
What do you think might be Bitso's biggest challenge when it comes to actually tackling this market and like winning the market? Where could Bitso fail? Like what could go wrong? And maybe it's endogenous or exogenous as well. Like I'm curious to get your takes on that.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Frontera, the podcast where we analyze what's happening in crypto in Latin America. As you know, this is one of the regions that has highest demand for this technology. I'm Ab, co-founder of and CEO of Espacio Crypto and Bando. I'm with my good friend Kush, co-founder of Odisea Labs. Dude, where are you? You change your background every week. Now, where are you?
I'm in Monterrey at the Inc. Monterrey, which is an innovation festival hosted by El Tec, which is one of Mexico's leading universities, sometimes called the MIT of Mexico, very focused on science and engineering.
The
So they invited
Monterrey
us over
Institute of
here.
Technology,
Exactly.
MIT.
So really happy to be here. And it's been great to be able to connect with the kind of local Mexican, very tech and innovation focused community, man. And your alma mater as well.
Yeah, that's my alma mater. That's what I studied. We were chatting about Tec de Monterrey before just starting recording. And the things that we're going to talk about today, Bitso just dropped their 2024 report, so we're going to analyze it. Also, there are a couple of news in stablecoins in Brazil, a couple of things in Argentina. I also want to hear your takes about Monterrey and what's happening there. And if you're listening to this, you need to go and subscribe to Frontera. There, you're going to read our whole analysis on Bitso's report. In today's program, we're going to just analyze the key messages that are obviously really thorough. We have great insights. I worked at Bitso. I was the head of crypto at Bitso for 3 years. So we know what we're talking about. So before going into that, man, tell me about Monterrey. So why are you in Monterrey? So is this conference, but what's the vibe there?
Yeah, so Inc. Monterrey is basically a conference that's very inspired by South by Southwest, which is sort of the border here. And the whole premise behind Inc. is how do we catalyze innovation, and not just from a technological standpoint, but how do we actually talk about innovation from a cultural standpoint as well, and create this whole sort of like festival around what it means to innovate and innovate at the social layer, which I think is fundamentally the most important thing at the end of the day when we talk about society is innovating. Interestingly, crypto is like 5% of what people are talking about here. Like the hype is AI and biotech and quantum computing, and I think sort of other frontier technologies. So anyways, I was invited to come and share some insights on one of the research ventures that we're undertaking within Odisea, where we're exploring the frontier of technology, particularly deep tech, and how do we catalyze more investment into deep tech in the region. And then also was invited to give a guest lecture at the business school as well. And so, yeah, it's been really great, man. I'm really happy to be here. And happy to connect more with, as we were talking about earlier, kind of the Mexican ecosystem. So obviously one of the key markets for the region, and El Tec, I think, is such an important hub of tech and innovation. So, but I'm curious, like, what do you think about, what's happening in Mexico and the role of universities like El Tec with regards to driving sort of more adoption of these frontier technologies?
That you're lecturing the future apps, right? So I was in that seat at some point listening to cool lecturers talk about technology. So that's really cool. I think that we were just chatting that Tec de Monterrey, MIT Monterrey Institute of Technology is one of the best universities in Mexico, definitely. Um, Being completely honest, and my insight that I told Kush is that education in Mexico, it's mostly private schools, and the Tec de Monterrey has this reputation that we have like really professional, great people, but basically anyone that pays can go through the professional career, right? So through university. So that creates that there's a lot of people that are not maybe as hard worker and professional and all of that. There are other universities, on the other hand, like ITAM, where basically they have some of the best professionals in Mexico. And not a lot of people graduate from ITAM because they have a really high academic level. The problem with people at ITAM, and sorry if I touch any fibers, any sensible fibers here, but out of, I don't know, 100 people that graduate from ITAM, most of them are really competent. So they will be people that are intelligent, hardworking. The downside of that is that most of them are not great team workers. So once you hire them right off, right out of graduation, they're not the best ones, like to do teamwork. And the other thing is that they have a really cool, really cutthroat culture. So a lot of them are assholes, and that's not cool, right? So that's why having someone local in Mexico is really, if you're doing businesses in Mexico, it's really important because that's how you can filter like crappy people from Tec de Monterrey that there are a bunch of them, but they are also really good, talented people. And you can filter like, I don't know, bad cultural fits from other universities, specifically TAM, that I think that it's the second one. And also UNAM is a public university that provides education to a lot of people. That's great. Not everyone can get in because also has high academic standards. So I think that that's how I see it. And the roles of universities are, this is maybe a contrarian take, but I'm really bullish on universities because I think that it's a left group take of, oh, don't study, go do your thing. I mean, just going to universities, you can flourish because of social connections, just the vibe of being around people that want to know, just around the vibe around being people that want to learn and do things. That's really important from my perspective. So yeah, that's my opinion.
I mean, I think my take is I think there's an opportunity cost to everything in life, right? And if you go to study at university, you inevitably are sort of putting yourself potentially at like some degree of disadvantage with regards to what you could alternatively be doing with your time in your life, right? That's not to say that like going on to study, something that is actually really useful for the world, like medicine maybe, or hardcore engineering, that you can only access in academic institutions. Like there is some value to that, but I think every day more and more we're disintermediating the role of these elite institutions and just opening up access for more people to sort of go out into the world and build useful things. And I think
Yeah,
that's what excites me. So I think it's like it. I think the true left curve take is actually saying like discarding everything in one go and saying like, oh, they're completely useless, as you were saying, right? It's rather like,
yeah,
okay, what can I take from an academic institution and then transmit it towards, okay, this actually has a tangible impact in people's lives. This is just sort of like pontification, right? For the sake of, there's another way of coining that, but just for the sake of just producing academic knowledge without actually
yeah.
taking it to the world. And I think tech in particular, from the conversations I've had so far, is incredibly excited and interested in how do we take all this academic knowledge and put it out into the world such that it changes people's lives.
Yeah. I think that my conclusion in universities is that take of don't study, do your thing. It's more like a middle court take in the same sense that only university is the way to do things. I think that the left curve and the right curves are, I don't know, I'm just curious about it. Whatever that is, if that's going through a university degree or not going through one, if you prioritize and optimize for curiosity, the probability of you being successful in life increases a lot, I think.
Totally agree. Completely agree. So, I think it just goes back to this notion of like any kind of maximalism generally is going to be bad, right? And so,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, cool. Well, let's jump into this. We got a full agenda, lots to run through, so let's do it.
So Bitso posted this report on that it's called a Crypto Panorama in Latin America, a 2024 report. And I think that kudos to Lemon Cash because they were the first one doing this, and I think that they raised the bar, and now basically this is a standard that serious companies in Latin America need to do. Lemon Cash reports was published a couple of weeks ago, so Bitsos followed a couple of weeks later. And some of the key takeaways that you're gonna read in our newsletter, and then again you should subscribe. The first one is a couple of them is Bitso generally, like globally, grew 12% year over year in 2024. They reached 9 million users. They hit double digit growth in Mexico, 13%, and Argentina, 11% in the retail business unit. Also, they are like their data on stablecoins is amazing. They are pushing it a lot, And if you go to the report and you are watching this video on YouTube, you're able to see all of our analysis. It's a short read, but you're gonna have all the information from the report. And Kush, now I wanna land in what's bullish, what's neutral, and what's bearish for Bitso. So I'm going to start mentioning the bullish takes, and I want to create a conversation around it. The most bullish take for Bitso, in our perspective, is the institutional involvement in remittances. Bitso processed around of 10% of the remittances between US and Mexico. The size of the remittance corridor, of that remittance corridor, is of $64 billion. So they processed more than $6 billion just for remittances. So what's your take there?
Yeah, we've talked previously about the remittance corridor and how important it is, right? Oh, there's $150 billion in total Latin America that flows through remittances. And so if you can capture just a little bit of that slice of the pie, which again has been the holy grail of for so long for crypto, I think it's incredibly exciting. I think it means a lot for any company that can capture a meaningful portion of that. There's a lot of user experience challenges when it comes to actually being able to execute on that. It's again, the people sending the money need to be aligned and need to trust whatever rail they're actually sending their money on. That's where, maybe sort of a very US centric product like, say, the Coinbase wallet could be really useful and interesting, right? And then you send that onto Bitso, right, through the Coinbase wallet. But yeah, just being able to give particularly migrants the capacity to be able to send money from the US down to Latin America, I think would be crucial. We talked about this as well, like with regards to Trump, right? Is also as he's shipping more and more people out of the United States, how does that affect remittances? Like, are we going to see some sort of drastic fall in remittances, particularly given like the state of the economy and where everything is heading? I think we should, in theory, see a change, and we won't, get that data until sort of the year starts wrapping up. But that is something for sure to be keeping an eye out for. Ultimately, looking back at 2024, I think it's incredibly bullish for Bitso.
Yeah, incredibly. Yeah, super bullish, super bullish. And also, they have a bunch of different partners that those partners are doing the last miles for those remittances. So for the community to understand what are we talking about, a user at the end, they might not know they are interacting with Bitso, but they are doing all the remittances for big players, big remittance companies. So they are processing that. And basically, the problem here is that the user is not capturing most of that value. The value is being captured by the big remittance companies. So the user at the end, like the final person, really doesn't know that they are using Bitso. So this is a big opportunity for any company that wants to go direct to consumer, because they can, instead of providing the value to the remittance company, provide that value to the user. So that's anyone that we should keep track of business ideas that come out of Frontera. This is one.
Well, this is like Starlink does the opposite, but same thing, right? Because they take all of the funds that they have in emerging markets, they convert them to stable coins, and then they send them over to the US and then they convert it back to dollars, right? It's just a much better way of you being able to
Definitely.
transact. So I think like that's one thing that I'm always on the lookout for, and something I always think about is like, cool, like clearly I think the way to go is bringing more businesses to use stable coins as the de facto way of transacting value cross border, and it feels like there's actually a really big opportunity there, like huge,
Yeah.
and then not a lot of people are tackling it. I know, I'm curious, like, because you guys are doing a payments protocol, but it's very to some extent like B2C focused, but I'm curious how you think about the B2B opportunity with regards to stablecoins.
And the $64 billion is the size of the remittance corridor for consumers, not for businesses. Businesses are around $300 billion or more. And in that example of Starlink, I think that's the bridge guys talk a lot about it, how basically Starlink and other government agencies are using them. So the way that I see it is that to do payments in stablecoins is just the asset in which the remittance is being done, but you need at the end like the protocol that orchestrates all of that. So how we see it in Bando is that we are penetrating a specific niche, and then we'll grow, right? So this huge market in remittances is also a really flooded market already. There are hundreds of companies addressing this opportunity. And that's the second point that is really bullish on Bitso's report, that it's the growth of international payments using stablecoins in Bitso's volume grew 39% in the region. So we are achieving scale velocity for stablecoins. And Bitso is, I think that Bitso is the player that is best positioned to grab that market. Basically, if they're successful, the success of Bitso depends on them right now. So they are really well positioned to tackle this one.
What do you think might be Bitso's biggest challenge when it comes to actually tackling this market and like winning the market?
In stablecoins, like B2B stablecoins and all of
Yes.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or just like,
Like,
where could Bitso fail? Like what could go wrong? And maybe it's endogenous or exogenous as well. Like I'm curious to get your takes on that.
I think that liquidity is going to be an important one, and competition. So, Banco Azteca, Electra, one of the biggest financial consortiums in Mexico, is launching a stablecoin. They've been public about this, and before that, basically, Bitso was the only liquid point where people could do this type of transactions in size. And now they're gonna, like, competition is coming, and these are competitions of companies with basically infinite budget. Obviously, the thing that Bitso has is that they could be faster, they could be nimbler, they could be more intelligent in the sense that they are grabbing opportunities uh, with more, like, with more speed. But this competition was not present 3 years ago. So I still think that the market is big enough for Bitso to grab a lot of value out of it, and other competitors grab other elements of the value chain. Still, they are not alone anymore. And if they do not execute, someone will execute. As a consumer, as a Mexican, I'm really excited about this because, dude, I remember when we were at Sosu House in East Denver, and Akin from Bondi was at breakfast, just like, dude, I love this. Like, OpenAI launches agents, and 2 weeks later, Gemini launches agents, and 1 week later, Claude launches a better agent. They are competing. I love it. That's gonna happen in stablecoins in Latin America.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. But I think I do, I always come back to this idea of like an arbitrage, and I think there is a massive opportunity, Bitso, what it has going for it is also to some extent what will be challenging for it, right? Which is it's gargantuan size, and it just has to be super agile, super nimble, has to move at the speed such that it can keep up with a relatively new and very agile startup such as yourselves, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm excited to like see Bitso compete, and I'm excited to like see how ultimately consumers end up getting sort of better rates on their money movements, how businesses also are able to access better liquidity, faster payments, and so forth. So no, super excited. But yeah, let's see what's up next.
Yeah, so we mentioned two bullish things on Bitso. As you know, I was the head of crypto there for a bunch of years. So I love the team, I love what they do, but also we need to be critic and see the data in what's happening there. So a neutral point, it's not bullish nor bearish, but something that we identified in the report is that the user habit in retail users, their habits are really clear. The day in which the Bitso has more inflows from retail is the fifth day of the month, because in Mexico we pay at the first day, and a lot of people decide to invest on, like, the first days of the month. So why do we say that this is neutral? Because the usage habit is there, and if Bitso can capitalize on that, but if they do not, someone will grab that market, and that makes me go to the first point, that is bearish, that we identified. So the retail growth in Bitso was in Mexico was 13%. But the industry in Latin America grew 42%. So there's a delta there. If we that, and this data is from Chainalysis, and we don't have it specific for Mexico, but the industry is growing 3 times or almost 4 times the rate that Bitso grew in retail. And the second data point that we have is that then again, Bitso grew 13% in 2024, and market like inflows to Mexico in crypto increased 50% in 2024. So there's a delta there. There's a difference between the 13% and the 40-50% that the market is growing, where someone is grabbing that share, someone is grabbing that market, and it seems that Bitso is not closing that gap in retail. Kush have a little technical problems. That's the cost of the nomadic life right now in Monterrey, Mexico. It seems like the venue doesn't have any internet. So just to close the ideas that we have on the bullish, neutral, and bearish parts of the Bitso's report, I believe that that's the most important one. Where in the bearish side, where retail is growing 12% and the industry is growing 50% in the region, 50-40% depending on the data from Chainalysis that you get, and someone's capturing that market. And at the beginning of the year, we saw how Binance was on the highest position in the App Store in Mexico. Actually, let's take a look right now. Where's Binance versus Bitso position in Mexico? As you know, right now we're not in a good place in the market, and that's why crypto apps are not at the top in the App Store in Mexico. But the first crypto app in the App Store right now is Binance, that is in the 37th spot. The next one is a dollar app that is in 51 in the 51st spot, and Bitso is in 72. So that's the data. It seems like Binance is getting a lot of the market share right now. And that's on Bitso's report on what happened this week. Also, this week, there's this new Mexican peso stablecoin called MXNE that was launched by our friends of Etherfuse. And when we analyze the volume that they're getting, Dave Taylor, the CEO and co-founder of Etherfuse, tweeted MXNE on Aerodrome is doing at least 550x the volume of MXNT and MXNB. MXNT is the MXN stablecoin launched by Tether, and MXNB is the MXN stablecoin launched by Bitso. And when we look at the volumes index screener from MXNB, you can see that they launched it around of June 2024, and basically it volume dried up. There's not a lot going up there. And MXNE from the guys at Etherfuse, and this with a partnership with Kappa and Braille. Volume ramped up. It basically ramped up on March 19th, and during the last days, volume has gone up and has stabilized right now. $20,000 in volumes. These are the first experiments in MXNB. The volume it's $56, so basically drying up liquidity and volume. And liquidity in MXNE is around of $383,000. So that's happening. Also, the competitions in stablecoins in Mexico and in Latin America, and that gets us to the new stablecoin in Brazil, BRL1, that it's a stablecoin that it's tied to the Brazilian real. This stablecoin comes out of a consortium that includes Foxbit, Mercado Bitcoin, and Bitso, basically the most important exchanges in Brazil. They launched this new stablecoin. So let's see how it goes. Let's see how much market they can grab. And also this, as we've talked in previous fronteras, stablecoins are a really big opportunities in Latin America, and in Brazil specifically, we've seen that the regulators, they are keen to do the interaction between USD stablecoins and local stablecoins. Let's see how it goes. We're gonna keep covering the Brazilian stablecoin. On more news on Brazil, Polygon partnered with Mercado Bitcoin, the third largest private credit tokenization platform in the world, as they say it in Polygon, to tokenize $200 million in real world assets. So another sector in Latin America that it's really interesting, real world assets. Let's see how Mercado Bitcoin deploys this. And there's a new regulation for digital currencies and digital assets in Argentina called the PSAB. So it's for, in Spanish, is proveedor de servicios de activos virtuales, that is virtual asset service provider, basically, as it's known in other regions in the world. So this is the final part of something that we've been discussing about Argentina and regulation, where Milei has been trying to push this regulation. Now it's live. And those are the most important news. Sorry for the inconveniences that Kush had. Next week, I'm gonna be in Monterrey with Espacio Crypto's team, and I think that Kush is gonna be in Buenos Aires. A lot of things happening there. So please, again, subscribe to our newsletter. Please send any message to Odyssea's community in Telegram. We're gonna put these both links in the show notes. And as always, thank you for listening to Frontera. We'll chat next week.